how to set environment variables for .NET Framework. First, let's open an existing application, or if you want to create a new one, just create a new one. So here we have an open application, and then we have a default controller, and the only action here is test, which returns a flat string file. Yes, flat string. So the end goal of our video today is return an object that contains the current value of the configuration file, config.web.config. Okay, so the very first step in doing an environment variables in the framework is to add a reference to the NuGet package, which is Microsoft.configuration builders .environment. So here, as you can see, okay, no spelling, I'm sorry. Configuration builders environment. Install this, click in that arrow, click accept, wait to finish. This message just tells us steps if we came from a lower version. This is new to us, so let's ignore it. So we're done in the NuGet. Now if you observe in our web config, the reference actually add these lines. These lines, the first one, it add support to config builders, that section over there. And then now that the config builders section is recognized, we also add reference to environment config builders, config builders. So important note here is we're going to reference this line, which is the config builder. I'm just gonna have to change its name to a default environment. Next step is to do the application actually now. So normally in our web.config, we're going to add application settings, and then add our variables here, like the key. For example, in our test scenario, we're going to need SMTP server. Let's give it a initial value in our local as local test smtp.net. Okay. And then let's add another one for the purpose of contrast. Give it a key of smtp_id, and then the value of my email. So that we already have application settings. Let us first test this old ways of doing so. Here let's add a model, a class, add class. So let's name it my application settings, and then let's add properties that corresponds to our web config application settings, string smtp server, and then id smtp id. and then let's just add a constructor, my application settings, and then for demonstration purposes, let's directly add the values here. Let's first start by putting a reference to the configuration manager. Hit Alt Enter to open suggestions, and then add reference to system with configuration, and then app settings here. So then this one actually just access the value of the web config for application settings. So for SMTP server, we're going to need to put this key, the SMTP underscore server. And then for the SMTP ID is equals to app settings, then the key for SMTP ID, which is SMTP underscore ID. Save it. We can now close this. And then in our default controller, let's add a test here. Endpoint simple HTTP GET for the purpose of demonstration. And then let's return the object we just created, the class we just created, my application settings. Again, hit Alt Enter, and then add reference to the modules, and then give it a name. For this, let's say test environment config. Then return a new my application settings. This one is already returning the value of our configuration at web config because it is set in the constructor. So we're basically done for the basic example. Let's go ahead and build it by pressing Ctrl Shift B, and then run it in non-debug mode by pressing Ctrl F5. Let us wait for the application to finish loading in the runtime. Now let's go ahead and go to the endpoint. It says default, and then test env config there. Press enter, and we are returned. We are shown by the object wherein the properties are set to the key in our application settings, to the value of that key. See local smtp.net. Now what we want to do is to be able to add a system environment. So first let's set up the system environment in our local computer. To do that, press start and then search for environment variables. So here edit the system environment variables. Press on that. Click environment variables, and then here we're going to add a new environment variable. So the rule here is that the key in our web config that we want to store the value in the server must be equivalent to the one in the web config and the system variable. So let's copy this. For example, we want to overwrite the value of SMTP server. So go ahead and add a SMTP server, and then for testing to see the changes, let's say system dot smtp.net. Press OK, and then OK. Now, before we get started, for Visual Studio to detect these changes, we need to actually restart the solution, close the current solution, and then reopen it. Let's wait. And now it's okay. So the last step actually here is to give application reference for its configuration builders using config.builders, and then here we're going to add a reference to this, the name of our default environment configuration builder, default environment, and then just simply hit Ctrl+Shift+B to build the changes, and then again Ctrl+F5 to run this on non-divide mode. And then if we hit enter here, if we refresh the page, we are now seeing the value system.smtp.net. It means that our web config, the configuration of our application, has been overwritten by the value found, the machine key in our local computer's system environment variable. The same flow should be the same as to the Azure, and in order to do that, we simply have to go to our application service in Azure portal, head over to configuration under settings, and as you can see, we already have default application settings. Next thing we need to do is to add our custom application setting. Again, it has to be the same or equivalent to the one in our web config. We want to test if SMTP server are going to be overwritten by Azure. So let's do that. And for testing purposes, let's say live.smtp.net. Hit OK. Now let's save the changes and hit continue. It would not take long for this to finish. It's actually done. Now the next step is to actually go ahead and deploy these changes to Azure pipeline for the CI/CD to work. Let's just simply say deployment test. Deployment with environment variables test. And hit commit. And then sync. And then push. Wait the push to finish. So if we're going to check here in our pipelines, in the CI/CD Azure pipelines, it is now building our changes, the ones that we pushed to the master branch. It shouldn't take long, it's just about a minute. Let's wait for it. So we're done. We should be seeing these changes reflected in our releases. Maybe after we receive the confirmation email. Oh, so yes, here we have it. So it needs my approval. Let's just simply click on it and click on approve after this loads. See? So yeah, we're going to approve it. And now shall start deploying. Refresh the page to see the changes. It is now being keyed in production. Yes. So we're complete. So let's get back to our application in Azure portal. Click on Overview and visit our website. Control click here. It opens directly and go to the same endpoint as our local default slash .1 test environment config. Hit enter. Wait for it. And as you can see, our SMTP server value is now overwritten, but the value inside Azure configurations. Now it says live smtp.net, and if we're going to do another test by going to configuration and editing the value of this MTP server, say I am edited, and then press OK, click save. Sorry, it will warn you that this will restart your application. Just go ahead, continue. It won't take too long, hopefully. Yes, done. And if we're going to go back here in the endpoint and press enter, refresh the page, and we shall be seeing that our configuration has been created in accordance with the configuration in Azure. So yeah, that's all for this video. Thank you.